Yeah, we
Okay.
are live.
Okay. All right.
Welcome to Gen XYZ. I'm Pete. I'm the Gen Xer. This is what we do. We start with an introduction, and then we'll get to our special guest. But that's who I am right out of the gate. We're going hot today.
All right, we're gonna go hot. I'm Peter. I'm the millennial, the Gen Y, although nobody calls them that, but it doesn't fit it. Gen X, millennial, Z doesn't flow as well.
Ashley, I
And
thought you were
I-
slipping for a minute. You have to.
No,
Ricky, it's a tradition. The millennial has to get booed.
Do you have a,
Just
Got
the way
it.
goes.
Got
do
it.
you have a sound effect, Ricky?
I don't know if you can hear it.
No.
No?
Well,
Ah,
wah,
I had
wah,
it.
wah.
Technology,
Exactly what it sounded like.
technology obeys me.
Pete had it. Pete had it.
Did it come through for
Yeah.
you?
It came through.
I can't hear it, but there we
I
go.
can hear it.
That's the sound the millennial gets.
Cool. Oh, wow.
Look at this! Wow, a guest with effects. That's a special thing. But anyway, Ashley, I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
I guess it's okay. I'm Ashley. I am the Generation Z.
And our special guest.
And I'm Ricky Baez, and I am Gen Xer. I'm a Gen Xer. I think we're outnumbering everybody here, Pete.
Yeah, it's like you guys are. This is gonna go to the Gen X on this one.
That's the name of this podcast. Just Gen X.
The
you are.
forgotten
You're-
generation.
You're our first Gen X guest, Ricky. So you really need to represent our people. Do it well. I trust that you will. But we're thrilled to have you,
Thank you.
as our HR consultant extraordinaire. Ricky, if you just want to introduce yourself a little bit further, but beyond your generation, because we as much as we don't like to admit it with the millennials, we are more than just the generation we were born into.
Yeah, so I'm Ricky Baez, and I am a Gen Xer, and I just realized that feels like I'm in a meeting, confessing what I am and what I do. And I've been in HR for about 22 years, and I love everything Star Wars, everything 80s, and everything barbecue. So if that's not a Gen Xer for you, I don't know what is.
That sounds like the Ricky I know.
There you go.
Now, Ricky, we'll put a disclaimer on this since you're with us for the first time, but I think you've watched us before. HR is off the table, right? Anything goes. We can insult each other, and everyone has to be okay with it. So that's what you signed up for. I think you know that.
I think you'll be surprised that I am able to clock out, and I can hang with the best of us. So yeah, it's you guys might be surprised with this one.
Leave your feelings and emotions at the door. So, Peter, that may mean you have to stay on the other side of the door. I don't know if you can.
All right, yeah. As I am well known to be a quite emotional person, so
What?
Millennials are emotional. Millennials are emotional.
don't you know, Ricky? I represent all of the millennials. I'm the king of millennials.
Then you are the
Yes.
outlier. Let me tell you.
So if you go ahead, Ash.
I was just gonna say, can I just say we need to get another Gen Zer on this because we've done millennial, we're doing Gen X. Hopefully, we could do Gen Z.
We
next.
do. Well, we'll have to wake them up, in order to do it. So yes, we can certainly schedule.
I'm sure we could find some.
But if you're joining us, we love comments, we love interaction along the way. We always come with a topic that we'll speak to, but we're happy to pivot if something interesting comes up along the way. So if you are watching and you want to challenge us or question, have some questions, share them, and we'll find a way to work it in. So
Yeah, we
we're
love
ready
chasing
to.
shiny objects. So give us if we'll go on any tangent.
We are, but ultimately we're here to acknowledge that we are different generations. We come from a different perspective. We're born in different times, but we're all in the workforce together. All have to get along. All have to hopefully enjoy each other, and we do that at least for this hour on our Gen XYZ, and have a little fun, poking fun of each other along
That
the way.
works.
So.
That works.
Works
Yeah.
for me.
All right, so Ashley, what's on the agenda for today?
Corporate versus startup.
Oh.
Yeah.
Corporate versus startup. So really, we've talked in the past, Ricky, if you want to weigh in on this too, we can certainly bring it in about freelancing, right? We know that freelancing is becoming increasingly popular, specifically becoming increasingly popular among younger generations. And I just read an article I shared with you guys earlier this week that millennials and Gen Z you guys are making more through freelancing than my generation. So we have more experience, right? In theory, we should be able to command higher income, but you guys are making more money. What's up with that?
Do you think it's because the thing I was looking at when I read that article is, do you think it's because we just, represent a higher proportion of the people that are like engaging in the freelance market? I mean, most of the freelancers that I've interacted with, that I've dealt with, are at most maybe older millennials and younger, it seems. Granted, it's a lot of the people I've worked with have been like technology based, so it kind of goes hand in hand. But that's what it seems like to me,
I feel like everyone. Oh, what were you
No, I'm
saying?
sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, especially I see this on TikTok. I think I've mentioned this before. Every millennial and Gen Z right now is kind of against the 9-to-5 corporate life, and they all just want to jump to freelancing and like just show their skills through there. So I feel like they're just making a ton of money.
And Pete, I think the reason that's happening is because it's talent today. The Gen Zs today and the millennials today have more access to it than you and I did back in the day, right? So now it's more relevant, right? So I don't know if that's a fair comparison to say, well, why are they making more money than we did at that time? Because I think they have better tools to do it than we did back then. I mean, Pete, you remember back then when you had to do a research paper, you had to go to the library, look up that card, or maybe do one of those Encyclopedia Britannicas that somebody sold you door to door, right?
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Ashley, a library is a place where you store books.
We had those in college.
Okay, sorry.
But
In
we
history
would-
class, they had it in history class. That's how she knows about it.
just use the library computers, and we would just look at the library books for aesthetics.
You go to the library to work on the computer. So that's
And you do your reading on there.
exactly.
But see, she
But
doesn't
no,
know
I
the
mean-
Dewey Decimal System that he referenced. I got that reference. I know what that is.
Did you guys, like, when did Upwork come out for freelancers? Did you guys have that at all?
No. So Upwork we should know this. Upwork's probably been around, I'd say in the last 10 years, and increasingly more popular each year. And when I
2013.
think about freelancing, so I think what this Business Insider article, as much as anything, was pointing out that the younger generations are taking advantage of freelancing as their primary source of income versus supplemental income. And a lot of people really often assume gig work is a supplement, right? I drive Uber on the side. I do food delivery on the side. But freelancing is much more than that. We know that, right? It is a way to work independently, autonomously, without having to work in the traditional employer relationships. So of course we're big fans of that at ZenGig because it equates to freedom.
Yeah,
freedom's good.
And it's and again, technology has evolved in such a quick pace that, look, if you was to take us, Pete, and kidnap us from the 80s and 90s and drop us here with the current knowledge, we're without the knowledge that we have, we would be so confused. We really would be confused because it's, as a matter of fact, if you take anybody from the 70s and just drop them here, right? I mean, just 3 years ago, people were taking pictures of their ice cream while wearing a mask. People would be confused with everything that's happening right now. So we come from an environment where we have seen, Gen Xers have seen technology evolve from one step, take a huge step to the other. I still remember a time where I had to wait until my mom got off the phone for me to log into AOL, and it was a dial-up. Right? When it's I don't know if you guys, Ashley and Peter, Peter probably have heard it. You know what it sounds like.
We
right?
had dial-up in my house, so like I mean, granted, I was like in early middle school, but like I mean, I remember when like Roadrunner came around and like high-speed internet.
Yeah, and I always, I've got a 10-year-old son, for those of you who don't know, and I look at him, I'm like, dang, you're lucky. you have every piece of information literally in your pocket. Movies, picture albums, the ability to make a movie, the ability to take pictures. And my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Anderson, South Bronx, PS 107. Remember when you told me I was never going to have a calculator in my pocket? I'm looking for you. I'm looking for you because I want to talk to you and say, you were wrong. I do have one in my pocket. So technology is evolving, and I think that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I mean,
That makes sense.
you mentioned the Upwork, Guru, Upwork, Fiverr, like all those different sites. Like it used to be if you were going to freelance, like you had to go out, find your own clients. Like it was now you can just put your services up there and people will hire you. I mean, and then you make relationships and stuff like that. I think it's become way easier, and it's, only going to get more and more simple, which is as people kind of, feed into these different apps and these different platforms, where their services are really all that's required. They don't need to actually really have that great of skills in sales or marketing, or that, like they just put out, an example of their work and people find them, and it's only going to get, simpler.
What about corporate life? What do you, we can't leave that in the dark. There's still people in the corporate life.
Let's break that down a little bit. Let's compare if freelance, and I've talked about this, not freelance, but a startup business, right, to a large, established business. And I've often thought that the person who is happy and comfortable and enjoys working in, I'll say a small business, but in many ways, I'm also saying a startup where you have to wear a lot of different hats. You have to be flexible. It lacks structure. That person who's happy in that and thrives in that environment isn't necessarily going to be happy in a large corporate structure, and vice versa. So I don't think one's better than the other. I think it's a very individual thing, but I've never, prior to today, thought about it by generation. So that's what we're going to get into a little bit is, are younger people more suited to startup work, or do they need more structure? So, or is that something that's really independent of your age or your generation and really just a matter of who you are? Do you guys have an initial thought on that?
I think younger people are more inclined to start up rather than corporate, especially I feel like because of COVID and all these changes, especially with like remote work and everything. I feel like there's much more mobility with startup and much more freedom. And with remote work, I feel like it's more like I'm on my own kind of thing. I have to figure everything else out while I'm at home versus like when I'm in corporate, I'm in a big office. There's so much going on. So I feel like personally, I see a lot more Gen Z and millennials leaning towards startup. What do you think, Peter?
I mean, I don't know if it's a generation thing. It's an age thing more than anything else. Like younger people seem to be more fine with just kind of whatever, as long as it's paying the bills. Like I'm okay doing this and doing that and doing, whereas maybe as people get older, they want to have a little bit more structure. I mean, I totally agree. That's like people who like one might not like the other, and vice versa. I've worked on small teams, and I've worked obviously in big corporations, and it's definitely, there's pros and cons of both of them. I think probably, if we're going to go by generations, I think the millennials, at least from my perspective, they tend to probably fall into liking the corporate a little bit more, only because it has that structure, and, you can play into the whole work-life balance thing. If you don't care as much and you're just like, I'm just going there to get a paycheck, it's nice to have just a job that's like not everything relies on just you. Like now there's the downside of that you're replaceable and all that, but whereas in a startup, if you're not there and you're the only person who knows how to do like 7 different things, like that's a problem.
I feel like if you're in corporate, it's more of like, oh, I'm just a cog in the machine. Like no one's like gonna even notice I'm like even working here. Versus with startup, I feel like a lot of people are more, since it's like could be more of a smaller team, you're getting noticed more, you're not that cog in the machine, you like can show like what you're
a bigger
doing.
Cog in the machine. You're the only
It's a much bigger machine. Now I'm looking in the comments. I see Katie G. She says, I think older people like the idea of corporations because of stability. I agree with that. Because I think it depends when you were born and what you was exposed to when you was growing up. when I was growing up, what I was exposed to is you need to get that 9 to 5 corporate job because of stability, because of the P word, and the P word is pension.
Yeah.
Right? Back
Gotta get
then,
401k,
pension was a
gotta
big
get-
thing. Yeah. Now, and you guys stop me if I'm wrong. Now, the people who are born like in the 90s and the 2000s, they are growing up in an era where they have a lot of opportunities online. So that freelance work is more in their face than what it was to us before. Like I was just, it's for those of you who know TikTok, I discovered it about 2 years ago. And these days, last night, I was looking at it, and I don't know if you guys noticed, there's people making money when they're acting like a character, and people are sending them different things. They're making like $7,000 a day doing that.
Yeah.
Why did I go to
sorry.
school?
Wait,
So-
what are they doing?
There are people
Go ahead,
on
Ashley.
live streams. Oh my gosh, it's all over my TikTok, and I'm like,
It's
go
horrible.
away.
I hate it.
It's insane. So there are people on their live streams. Sometimes, like they'll be in costume and they'll act like a robot. They'll be like an NPC, and someone will like send them like, when we were on live, someone would send us a rose and we got like coins. So someone would send them like a hot dog. So the NPC would be like, yum, 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 like, thank you for the hot dog. And they would make money from that. And people will just be sending them like all this stuff, and they'd react to it. and they're
That
making
is
money off
not generating confidence in the future of our
It
youth,
makes
right?
me-
I mean, that's
I mean, if you're
Wait,
the, if you're,
hold
the-
on,
if you're
hold
the
on. Ashley
robot
said something
guy that's
interesting.
getting money just to do dumb,
or that's just envy talking on my part.
you're a digital
because-
street performer, effectively. Like, it's no different than someone
That's
breakdancing on the corner with a hat out there, except that they get a lot more money, I guess.
They just don't
And
have, they can do it from the comfort of their home instead of being on a street corner. Okay, fine.
So Ashley had a good. Ashley, you said something that really surprised me. You're saying, and maybe I misheard you. That annoys you?
Yes, it bothers me because you're telling me here I am, working my job, and my job is like 9 to 5, and I'm putting in all this effort making my money. You're telling me I can just become an NPC, get in costume, and be like, thank you for the rose, and make money like that?
I haven't seen
It's
that yet.
insane.
Well, actually, though, think about it. You've produced how many videos have you made over the past year and a half for TikTok and for Instagram? Hundreds, right? Hundreds, maybe 300, 400. I don't.
Maybe more at
hundreds.
this point. It's been a year.
Maybe more. A lot. And what's our most viral video? What's our biggest home run so far?
The kid,
A
right?
little girl
Yeah.
beating up her little brother. 31 million views. 31 million views and counting, because it still gets more views every
Yeah.
day. And that's been 9 months, I think, since you published that one. So not all the depth of advice and the career content that we make that's well researched and took years to learn. Nope. One kid hitting another kid. That's what gets all the views. So look, we can't judge it too harshly because it works. And if someone finds a way to make money doing something ridiculous, hey, good for them, right? Like, that's wonderful. We are all about finding your career zen. However, probably not a route that someone should plan to succeed, going down, right?
Well, Peter made a good connection that I wasn't even thinking about. That's the equivalent of somebody being a Michael Jackson impersonator in the corner of Times Square. Right? I didn't think about it that way. So what this is doing, it's now that he said that and I'm making that connection, it's just evolved. It's the same thing. It's just evolved. And who knows, maybe in 20 years, you can close your eyes and a hologram would come out. It's that's not far-fetched. I think what needs to happen, especially going back to the topic with what happens in corporate America, right? When somebody comes in from a startup or somebody young comes into corporate America, it's a big shock. There's two shocks. There's the pre-COVID shock and there's the post-COVID shock. The pre-COVID shock is that was expected. You're working Monday to Friday and just 9 to 5. Post-COVID is I got to go into an office? Why? I got everything here, right? And if I'm hungry, I just do Instacart and Publix will ship something to me. If I want something from Amazon, everything is at everybody's fingertips. I think what we need to do.
Let me ask you guys this. This is, I'd love to hear each of your answers. we hear these stories, right? We hear of the influencers and you see them on Instagram. My wife and daughter follow these influencers, go around, seemingly have no tangible skills, right? But they go to resorts, they're attractive, and people follow them. They open boxes of things, which to me is
Unboxing
bizarre,
video.
right? But they open boxes, they pull them out, and they try to tell you to order through their link, whatever, right? That's it. We have weird things now, like people acting like robots, and people send them money to perform silly tricks. Do you think that ultimately is a dangerous sort of path that we're on, where young people, it's one thing to aspire to be a great athlete that takes skill and talent and hard work, or a performer, or a musical artist, or an actor, actress. This is just getting paid to do things that are worthless in society for all intents and purposes. What do you think about that? I mean, where does that lead? Or is it just, hey, it's just an evolution and it's where we are and no
I
big
mean,
deal?
I feel like it is an evolution, but I think like the whole acting like a robot thing, like I think that's bizarre. But like influencers, I feel like, yes, it may seem bizarre, like this person is literally going to a resort to like promote this business. But I guess like in a way, like that's just like marketing evolving. Like it's
I mean,
becoming
they're
more,
just a freelance salesperson. I mean, that's how I
Agreed.
view
yeah,
like.
it's more
And I,
sales. And it could be hard too because, if they're not interesting enough and there's so many people doing the same thing, they're not going to generate any sales. So I feel like it's getting competitive. And even though I'm like, because sometimes I even wonder, I'm like, man, they must have such a nice life just going to try Starbucks and then promoting it on their Instagram. But at the same time, I'm like, this probably also is hard because how are they going to promote this product that like in a way that nobody else is?
so I know a girl, it's a friend of mine, and he is dating a girl who is a like influencer. Like it's not like a lot. I think it's like she's like 90,000 followers or something like that. But she gets paid to do stuff. And he's like, dude, it's like, and I guess she's friends with this other girl who's got like a couple hundred. And he's like, you see this, like how great it is. Like it is not great. And it is like a full-time job. It's like, we went on a vacation and it was like paid for by the hotel and they had to showcase some things. Like we went to the vacation and like out of like the 3-day vacation, like one day was maybe for us. The other 2 days, like we literally had to wake up before the sun to get to the beach before there's crowds so we could take these like posed pictures, go there. He's like, you got to feature this and there. He's like, it's like his words. He was like, it was soul crushing to like do some of this. So he's like, it was like not fun. It was purely posed. And then you think, he's like, so for every one person of that, there's 50 people who aren't making any money and are still doing that. So they're working for nothing. So I mean, it's a grind to be the streamers that can't go take a bathroom break because they got to stream for 10 hours and like that type of thing. Whenever I look at it, and I try, if I ever would ever get like FOMO or something, I'd be like, take a step back and be like, that is, they're selling their salesmanship and their marketing and whatnot. But so it's no different than a salesman at a marketing company that's trying to sell their services. They're just working freelance and, it's not all it's cracked up to be.
Peter, I want to challenge your friend's definition of soul crushing. I mean, I don't know if that's soul crushing, right? You have to get up before the sun comes up to go take a shot at the beach.
Yeah, but you're doing it all day long, and you're not like enjoying the beach. It's literally like, pose this, take pictures of this.
Sign me up.
Take hours spending on your phone. Like that is not that would, to me, as somebody who's not really that big on social media anyway. Like I would not want to do that.
And again, you have to create like a thorough plan. If that plan doesn't work, you just did all of that for nothing. And it's probably very like unmotivating when that happens. And then the fact that you're relying on this commission and like all that effort you put into that, you get nothing. It's that part could be soul crushing.
So here's to me where is the big difference. If just picture somebody who was born 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. In 15 years, they're going to be in the workforce. What we're talking about right now is going to be very normal to that person, because they don't know a time where that wasn't available. They don't know a time where that wasn't some way where you can make money. just like us right now, right? It's 50 years ago, even 100 years ago. I don't think there was HR. There wasn't recruiting the way we know it right now. It's evolved, right? And I'm pretty sure that people from 100 years ago will look at us now and be like, that's what you guys are doing now for money? I used to hunt, deer just to eat, and I hunt steaks at Publix, right?
Well, that's a great point for sure. That perspective changes significantly with time and as we evolve. I thought of this this slide. This is a representation of Ikigai, which is a Japanese term, and we have our own ZenGig version of it. But when I think of these influencers, and we'll get back on topic. We're so far off what we're supposed to be talking about today.
You're welcome.
But okay, so what you love, sure, not having to grind it out and taking pictures or videos of yourself all day sounds fun, right? Getting stuff sent to you. What you're good at, okay, if you have a face for the camera and you know how to take videos of yourself, sure. What you can be paid for, no doubt. Influencers are getting paid, but in my opinion, it very much fails the last quadrant, which is what the world needs. And I'm going to say that the world does not need people to unbox things for a living. I don't know. I don't think that has long-term viability, but that's just maybe that's me being the old guy here.
All right, old guy. I don't think it's more like unboxing. They're trying products so we don't have to. So I guess let's just say, like, when it comes to makeup, especially influencers will go try a product, they'll break out in pimples, and then they'll be like, okay, don't try this product, or do try it, so then we don't have to.
So you see value in it.
Yeah, I mean, even though the unboxing is just like,
you're talking about like professional, like someone reviewing something, which I mean, yeah, reviews are
influencers pretty much.
So you realize they're being paid, and you're like, that's not really a honest review if they're being paid to. They're not going to be like, this sucks, don't buy it.
But some of them do honest reviews. I mean, those are the ones that I think like the world needs. The ones that are just like, hey, buy this Mazda, it's a nice car, but it's actually not a nice car. Then it's like, okay, that sucks, don't put that out in the world, kind of thing.
I got a confession, guys. I'm sorry, I got a confession. I watch unboxing videos.
They're pleasant.
I do. Because Ashley's right.
You looked around to make sure no one heard you say that.
Well, I mean,
right?
I got my name to think about, right? No, so I watch unboxing videos, right? Because it's let me tell you, I don't buy a product because that's a commercial. I buy a product because somebody told me about it, or I saw on TikTok, right? Because then I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. And then I want to see how it is in real life application and what it looks like. And I've made some, pretty good purchases because of an unboxing video. So yeah.
All right.
That's just the new marketing. Like, stuff isn't on TV. I mean, there's TV commercials on like Hulu. We went away from cable and now we're back.
So we will reconsider all of this and maybe put a career guide on ZenGig for influencer, unboxer. So perfect. However, back to startups versus stable, large organizations. Is there a difference in how these is one generation better suited for one environment or another? We were talking about Gen X first. I think startups sort of came into fashion, right? That phrase during the last probably 30 years. I mean, there's always you call a company starting off a startup, but that became big for a lot of people in I think I'm a little older than you, Ricky. So in my generation, when I was in my mid to late 20s, that's when the internet companies tech companies were flying, being created like crazy, and everyone wanted to jump ship into those. But a lot of people were burned. You guys, were too. Peter, you know of this. Ashley, you were too young, of course. But a lot of friends of mine were multi-millionaires on paper in their mid 20s, and in most cases, almost all the cases, those companies went out of business and never materialized. So I think a lot of people were who are now Gen X, when they were in their 20s, took that step. Some succeeded, became very wealthy. Most didn't, and probably migrated more back to the security of a large company.
Yeah, I think the message people need to hear, and this is for both a startup and this is for both corporate, right? It's so let's talk about corporate first. If you're like me, you're a Gen Xer and you climb through those ranks, you have to understand when somebody comes in who's relatively young, they do not have the same thought process you did growing up in your career. They just don't. So that flexibility has to be there from a Gen X or even baby boomer perspective that the people coming on board right now do not have any idea, and I'm not saying this in a bad way, they don't have any idea what you went through with the lack of technology that people have today to actually make your bones in the world. So you have to understand that. So patience is a virtue. The same goes for the younger generation coming in. Just because that old guy is sitting over there complaining about the early bird special at Denny's, just because he's complaining about that, it doesn't mean he doesn't know anything, right? It just means that he has a different thought process. There's legacy knowledge there. There's wisdom and experience there. I think what we all have to do is we have to understand that each generation has a pro and has a con for the current situation that they're in, and we have to understand what those are. That's what I'm thinking. What do you guys think?
I mean, yeah, I agree, and I think that being in a startup, maybe you don't even have those types of people, because if there's 10 people on your team and they're all from a kind of similar background, you're not going to have that mentorship type relationship. People coming into a more corporate one, I feel like that's kind of why the younger generations maybe go towards the startup, is to tie it in with our influencer thing. They see these people and they're like, hey man, this guy on TikTok's making all this money, like things should move fast. I want to be involved at a company that can do this and this and this. It's high risk, high reward. Like the .com thing. You're like, I'm working at a small company and I get to do a bunch of stuff. Maybe I'll be rich really fast because I can advance really fast, but also maybe the company will go out of business. So there's that. Whereas the corporate one is like, it's, slower, but it's more stable, but I could also get laid off, so you just have to play the kind of pros and cons. I feel like the younger generations, maybe they see the people on the internet and they don't see as much value in like how the older ways, were done. So they're like, I want to work at a company that's fast and agile and can do all these things. And that's where the startups kind of,
and it's got cool tricks like this.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
I work at a company that people that can do that on video.
Now, I have to ask, do you guys think there's more work-life balance with corporate or startup?
No, well, I'm really glad you brought that up, because having been involved in both very big established companies, I work for two big companies, of course, have started my own business. Unequivocally, the startup life isn't made for work-life balance, not at all. And if anyone suggests otherwise, they either have a very unique situation that they're in, or they just haven't done it. So I think that it is surprising that young people would choose the startup route, because we've talked about this often. They crave that work-life balance, demand it in their profession. It's really not something you find in most startups.
It's like a boomerang. It's coming around. Like, I feel like maybe the millennials in their like 30s and stuff, they're like the corporate ones. They're like, I want to work at giant company. I'm going to, work at Disney because there's thousands and thousands and thousands of employees. And when I go home, I am out. Like, there's another person to take over. I don't have to care. And the Gen Z it's kind of there. They've come back around and they're like, I'm more comfortable taking that risk and, working at a smaller company where maybe I got to work extra hours, but I'm young and I can do it, who cares type of thing. And I can make a bunch of money really fast and get promotions every 6 months to senior director because there's 10 people who work at this company.
So question for Ashley, what is your definition of work-life balance?
Oh man. I guess work-life balance is when you can still have time with your family and prioritize them, but also at the same time, you can prioritize work, not get left behind, and still be on top of things. So I guess like having a life still versus like.
Well, here's why I ask, because Pete, I get what you're saying as far as a freelance. You're working 7 days a week. Trust me, I know. It's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But where I give up my freedom for the weekend, I get it on a Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Because if I have nothing going on, I can go to the dentist, I can go get some coffee. Corporate America, you got to take PTO for that, right?
Yeah.
And just the other day, I went to Whole Foods and I was there for a couple of hours on a Tuesday. All right. So really it depends. I think it depends on the type of job you have, not necessarily the industry, right?
Yeah.
I guess so. Yeah, because I feel like certain industries too are starting to like notice the whole work-life balance trend that is like happening right now. So I feel like a lot of the times now they're trying to add more flexibility to their employees, especially if they work from home.
Well, we talked about flexibility instead of like, a division. Like Pete, what you're talking about is like, I'm either on or I'm off type of thing. Whereas flexibility, like I can go to the dentist, I can do whatever. But maybe I answer emails at 9 p.m, or maybe I answer this on a Saturday morning.
Yeah, Ricky, you described the life of a freelancer. That is not a startup lifestyle by my definition, where there's no off. And I think that's where the work-life balance is non-existent. In a true startup, I'll use Zengig as an example, right? We have two separate companies. One is a staffing company that's been in business 18 years. Another is Zengig that's been in existence for a year. And in Zengig's case, we're fighting against giants, well-established companies. You could work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and not do all the things that Zengig needs from me.
That's true.
Right? Fact.
That's true. Yeah.
So balance is when I think of that, it's effectively a decision to limit success, right? Of the startup that is Zengig. And so that's just the way it is. So there's no, hey, I'm going to do this Saturday instead of Tuesday. I'm going to do this Saturday and Tuesday. Is the way.
So that makes sense because I find myself working more on Sundays and Mondays. Sundays, especially Sundays, because I have nobody calling me. Everybody's off. So I have my time to do what I need to do for the rest of the week. And then on Monday and Tuesday, I have time to actually, deal with clients, do all these things, whatever needs to happen. Because I've done all the legwork that somebody else is supposed to do, right? If I get enough employees. So I guess to me, it's different. But you're right. There's a difference between being a freelancer and a startup. Because I've seen startups that you're the recruiter, you're the CFO, you're the CEO, you're the janitor, you're the marketing person, you're everything. You got like 18 W-2s, right? Because of what you're doing. But I honestly do believe, guys, I think historically, and I don't have any numbers to back this up, historically, younger workers would accept risk more than somebody who's in their 40s or 30s, 40s, and 50s. Because somebody who's in 30s, 40s, and 50s, they've established a career. And why would I disrupt this? I've worked so hard for this. Why would I take a chance? Whereas somebody who's just starting out, there's nothing to disrupt. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yeah,
it definitely does.
Okay. All right.
And here's a comment that Nicholas shared, and we don't know how what generation Nicholas falls in, right? But not everyone is in a position to take equity instead of compensation. If you can, that can be very valuable from a learning and upside experience, or standpoint. But not everyone has that luxury. So with startups, Peter, what do you think? I mean, weigh in as millennials. Do you think that generationally there's even much there?
I mean, if you're going to look at it, I think it's more just age. Like Ricky, if you've got a house and kids, like you're going to be a lot less inclined to take a risk than if you've got nothing to lose, so to speak, and you're willing to get that experience. Now, if you're like, hey, I'm a developer. Say I'm a developer. I'm going to go work at this startup. And they're willing to teach me stuff. I'm going to also get to learn network stuff, and I'm going to get to learn some project management. So there's something to be said about getting exposure to things that you would never at a huge company. Like they've got an entire department that does project management. The developer's not going to get to do stuff like that. If you're eventually wanting to be well-rounded and be in a leadership, like there's something to be said about being on a team where you get to do all of these things. Now it's a double-edged sword because you could work at some of these large companies are like, I only want somebody who's really good at this one tool on an enterprise scale, and maybe you're not the guy for it. So the friends I have who work at smaller companies, they like that being, I like that being able to like do different things and not get bored. Like, you know, a person in tech gets to go do sales stuff and be involved on client calls, whereas that's not something that's going to happen, you know, at a huge corporation generally.
So what about people who've been working in corporate America for the past 10, 50, even 20 years? What advice would you give them if they're looking to make a switch over into a startup?
I wouldn't even say necessarily startup. I would just say generally like SMB, like small, medium business to the startups on the extreme. But the biggest thing that I've seen people struggle with is, you know, being able to wear different hats. Like people are not used to that. They're like, what do you mean there's not a help desk department? Like I got to figure it out myself. I got to be, you know, that's something that's hard. And people, you know, it's not always that people aren't able to do it. You know, when you're the person that comes up with this idea, you're like, we should do this. Okay, go do it. That's you are the person who's doing it. So I'm glad you think that that's a good idea, because you got to be the one to actually implement it also.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
Well, that happened to me. I think you guys know the story, and Pete, you definitely know this because I spent most of my career in corporate America, and just recently I started doing my own thing. But before I started doing my own thing, I worked for Pete, right? And then I remember Pete and I had a meeting, and we wanted to launch something, and I'm like, okay, we got to go through legal, we got to do all these things. I'm thinking this is 3 months ahead, and he's like, no, we're doing this Friday. And it was 3 days away. I'm like, it blew my mind because I wasn't used to that, right? A smaller, I know Pete's organization is not a startup, but it's smaller than corporate, and things move so quickly that I had whiplash by how quickly but I quickly adjusted. But that was a big adjustment for me. That's why I was asking Peter, what advice would you have for somebody who's going to make that switch?
There wasn't just one example of that. It took you multiple cycles of, all right, here's a thought, here's something we are thinking of doing, from idea to execution is at times one meeting, right? and listen, I mean, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's such a big adjustment from corporate life. We could say startup life, because we've always run like that. Now there's pros and cons. Structure is important and necessary in certain areas for sure. But speed and efficiency is hard to come by when there's multiple levels involved in a decision, when the person with the idea doesn't even know the decision maker and will never engage with them directly. I mean, that's very common in big companies. And, you know, we're the opposite of that, right? So I'm sure you were scratching your head a lot.
I had a thing here because it was just really fast. And I have to believe the opposite is true. I have to believe that people who spend most of their career at a startup, a smaller organization, when they decide to jump ship to corporate America, they have to have a level of patience that never existed before. Because if a decision is made on Monday and the expectation that this has to go on Friday, right? But then legal got to talk to it. Legal over here needs to talk to it. We got to get compensation. We got to get finance, research and development, something that normally takes 3 months. That may be an issue for the person who's not used to things taking that long. So they may think, I made a mistake, I'm going back.
Well,
so the
Ashley,
flexibility and patience needs to be there.
Ashley, now you're getting a taste of a bigger company now, right? Do you see those differences already? I mean, I know it's probably maybe too new, but are you seeing how different that that scenario is?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like before everything was just like quick. Everything was like literally just working out. And now with this, it's like I have to wait till like Monday to get a response from this person. And then I have to keep track of that. And then I have to follow up and follow up. It's like,
hurry up and wait.
I'm still training, but I'm like, come on, answer me already. Whereas before I was like, great, this person answered me, like, let's go, let's wrap this up. So
yeah, I mean, my last corporate job, I used to, if I wanted to change a word on a contract, I had to fill out a form to get in a queue for one of the team of attorneys to review it. Like, it's just, I mean, imagine going from where we are now back to that world. I mean, Peter, that would just be incomprehensible almost to be, you'd feel like you went from 60 to 0 from a speed standpoint. That would be very difficult.
Yeah, it's. I mean, the big ships can't turn around very fast. So
No, we
yeah,
can't.
not being able to just like make a change on something, or here's where this file's located, and I have access to everything. Like that's huge, and it's so there's something to be said about being able to have access to everybody in the company as well. Like you mentioned when I worked my last job if we had a visit from like home office or something, it's some director of a director who I've never met. I know their name generally, but like they're coming to like review work and stuff, and I get to maybe meet them one time. It's my suggestions don't matter. It's basically an inspection. Like that's the kind of thing whereas here I can call the president on his cell phone. So it's something to get used to as people, when they kind of change environments like that. So.
Oh, 100%. So what do you guys say? Corporate or startup? Which is better for someone?
I think it depends on what's important to you. I mean, like I said, I personally like the smaller businesses, just because I like to have that flexibility and the ability. Like a lot of red tape would frustrate me, and things being, going to a corporate, like slowing down significantly would be kind of, I feel like not my vibe. But I think that if it's important to you, and if you're just looking for a job to pay the bills, and you're like, I just want something, or you want to experience, you're in IT and you want to work with technologies that are way beyond the scale of any small company. Like you gotta look at it that way. Like, what are you trying to get out of the job? Are you trying to get, a fast-paced environment, or are you trying to get that stability and maybe access to things that you wouldn't get at a small company?
Yeah, I feel like, I'm neutral. If you're built for both, you're built for both. And it just depends on the person. It depends on the companies. So I feel like, I could see both sides working out.
Well,
no, go ahead, Pete.
No, please.
Well, I was going to say, it's the same thing what Peter said. It really depends on the person. But I'll tell you this right now. If you don't have patience, like no patience at all, corporate America is not for you. It's not for you. I'll say that right now, because if you want things to happen fast, there's a lot of red tape. And I was used to that. Now, I mean, I've been out of corporate America for about 3 years now. And I'm getting to the point that my patience is starting to wear away. I'm like, why aren't we doing this now, right? Because I know as a freelancer, time is money. Whereas in corporate America, time is money, but time moves a lot slower, right?
Well, you were in the military, so you were used to that like structure and that like hurry up and wait. You're like, I gotta wait just because I gotta.
I went to the Harvard of Patience, and that's the United States Marine Corps. Okay, we were experts at hurry. Pete said it. Hurry up and wait. That's what we did, right? If you told me right now something's gonna happen, all right, I know I'm gonna wait for like a week until command comes down and let me know what I need to do. But yeah, I'm used to that.
Well, as frustrated as I became with that slowness and inability to make decisions, it went. And as far as I could tell, as time went on, it was more so about not a
Pete, just say
lack
you're
of desire to make the decisions. It was protecting your downside more than taking the risk of the upside in a corporate setting. And I think many large organizations and middle management, which I was in, tends to work that way, or the people above me. But I was younger. I had less to lose, right? Yeah. I mean, I was in my early 30s, so I could take more chances. However, 18 years into starting my own business, while I used to proudly say, we will never be bound by structure and processes, I've come to learn the value of structure and processes. And to find that balance is where you strike perfection, I think, or find perfection. And I think I've erred too far on the side of being loose and chasing shiny objects. And I'm sure Peter would agree with that, and probably in his head at many times has gone, oh boy, here he goes again. And so now, fortunately, Peter, isn't afraid to say that, right? But still probably doesn't say it as often as he thinks it. So, I know that that's been to our detriment at times. And so in a perfect world, you would have that balance, but it's hard to find it. right? Because you're too cautious, you slow down and you miss out on progress and innovation. Too fast, well, then you're sloppy and you never really see things through or think them out as well as they need to. So
yeah, that structure and process is, I mean, that it's not, I'm not saying it's bad at all. And it's definitely like needed in a lot of things. And I mean, I operate that way in my normal life, like following, procedures. Just when if I'm working on something in the house, you do things in a certain way. Like that is something that large companies excel at, and it's just where it's too much, that kind of swing too far on the pendulum. So you want to find that Goldilocks, right, in the just right situation.
And it also depends how it's what environment you grew up in, right? Because let's real quick, let's talk about unions real quick. A lot of people join unions not necessarily because they agree with the union mentality. It's because that's what mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, everybody else did. Right. So it depends what kind of family you come from, how you was brought up. If you was brought up in a family of hustlers, and I use that term in a good sense, right? You hustle for money, then chances are you're going to end up in an environment where you're going to hustle growing up. Or if you're a rebel, you're like, I hate that. Right? I'm going to be the black sheep of the family, and I'm going to go to corporate America. So I think both ends of the spectrum has that black sheep. It depends who you want to be. You want to follow the family trend, or you want to pave your own way.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're not getting any new questions. We don't have any questions today. I'm
looking. Let me see what we got here. What is this open to work stuff?
So we I guess we get a different tone each time. But if you're on with us and you have a question you want us to address before we log off, then you're on the clock. We'll wait a few more seconds. But otherwise, Ricky, thanks so much for joining us.
It was fun. Thank you.
Always a pleasure to have you, Ashley, Peter. We got too far off topic today, so next week we'll
You're welcome.
It's organic.
I always love
taking we were going to do that anyway. Ricky was on, so.
Hey, it's like a podcast. Everyone goes off topic, when you're.
Although maybe I feel like we got some ideas for some future podcasts of that. So.
Well, I want to talk about something next week. I'll just put it out there right now and see. You guys can think about it. If you want to answer on the fly and we commit to it, great. I saw a post, and Peter, you and I've had this discussion before. Maybe I've had it with each of you individually in the past. It was someone, I can't think of the person's name. I don't even know if I'm connected to this individual, but on LinkedIn last night, they posted something along the lines of, I'm tired of seeing recruiters complaining about how hard their job is. And like your job's not hard. You're sitting in, it's like kind of what I've said in the past. You're sitting in a comfy seat in an air-conditioned environment. That's not a stressful job compared to jobs that are actually stressful. So let's stop saying that. So I wanted to explore that a little bit of what is pressure really, right? And are we so entitled now that we have it so good that adversity and perceived pressure throws us off so much that we can't handle it? Because we all know in the not too distant past, humans lived a very difficult existence. And in America, we do take these things for granted, where if you look at the rest of the world and how they have to survive from day to day, they still live a very difficult existence compared to what we have. So I like the thought of exploring that a little bit and seeing if generationally we have a different perspective on what really is hard, what really is stress and pressure.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
I mean,
I'm really going to sound like the old guy. I think
I'm waiting for it.
And
I'll be telling you to get off of my lawn 10 minutes into that conversation, probably. But
I'll probably really sound like a young person.
I feel like that's going to be, we're going to kind of be like, that's something that's been talked about forever. Like, if you didn't harvest your own wheat, you don't know what hard is.
Exactly what I'm saying.
Well, but to some large degree, right? Like we take, just like cell phones we talked about earlier. And I was talking to my my youngest last night. You can't imagine life without that. He doesn't know a life without that. We jokingly call him first generation iPad in our house, because when he was not yet old enough to walk, you'd hand him an iPad, at times, and he doesn't know life without it, which is wild. My other ones do, at least to some degree. So yeah, I think we are entitled and we are spoiled, but maybe that's just okay. I don't know.
Because that's the
Ashton,
evolving
but
nature of
guys are,
technology. Like,
you guys are, I think have a different perspective than a lot of your generation on this stuff. So Ashley, maybe you can find a true Gen Zer to
we
bring
need
on.
to find like the most generic Gen Zer and have them on.
Ricky
Oh,
wants to be
gosh.
part of this conversation.
Oh, I do. Because here's my thought on it, and I'm glad you brought that up, Pete. Because last week, and for those of you who don't know Orlando, Universal Studios is here every Halloween. They have Halloween Horror Nights, right? All this big thing, and my wife and I went last week, and I remember just sitting down, waiting, taking a break. Because 20 years ago, I didn't take breaks, but now I'm old. I got to take a break, and I remember thinking, wow, we're here. We're over here in this theme park in the United States, and right now at this moment across the pond in the Middle East, there's crazy things happening. How lucky are we that the only concern that I have that night is being sober enough to find my car in the parking lot afterwards, right? It's 20 years ago, I wouldn't sit down and think about that. Now that I'm older, I'm wiser, I'm more aware of that. And being that kind of aware, I'm also aware about technology, how easy we have it today. Because we have things literally at the palm of our hands, right? Whereas, again, 30 years ago, if I wanted to do a research paper, I had to go to the library.
Yeah.
I had to do that. So right now in my older stage in life, I tend to appreciate where we are more than whatever technological evolutions were available 20 years ago, where I just didn't care. So I don't know if that made any sense or not. From my perspective, I appreciate things more because I'm aware of how worse it could be.
Yeah, and I think we could, that's a good, that just shows that's a good topic that we can kind of dig
Yeah.
into.
Yeah, this will be
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, dig into it. We will then next
All
week.
right.
So, Ricky, thanks for sharing that. That's a great way to end, and something that we all need to remember. We are lucky to be here, and
Yeah.
thank goodness we are. So, all right, guys, I think we're done.
All
I felt
right.
upset that
All
beers
right.
were $18, but okay, whatever. Bye.
That's it
Have
for
a good
now.
night.
See you
See
guys.
you guys.